The obsidian chamber hummed with suppressed energy, a low thrum that vibrated through the very bone structure of the gathered Cathar dignitaries. Light, filtered through crystalline lattices embedded deep within the vaulted ceiling, cast long, fractured shadows that danced across the polished floor, reflecting in the multifaceted eyes of the assembled council. Grand Admiral Thrax, his carapace gleaming under the ethereal glow, stood rigid before the assembly, his mandibles twitching with barely concealed agitation. He had presented the data, the raw, unfiltered telemetry from the frontier outposts. He had detailed the encounters, the escalating tensions, the undeniable presence of humanity. And yet disbelief, that corrosive acid, continued to eat away at the resolve of the High Council. "Relentless," Councillor Zil pronounced, her voice a dry rasp that echoed in the vast chamber. "Such terminology is hyperbolic, Admiral. Perhaps your frontier commanders are prone to exaggeration. We have faced countless species across the galactic expanse. None have proven truly relentless. All yield, eventually, to the superior logic and strategic acumen of the Cathar hegemony." Thrax tightened his grip on the data pad, the cool metal pressing against his chitinous hand. "With respect, Counselor, the data speaks for itself. Their warships, while numerically insignificant at present, exhibit a tenacity unlike anything we have encountered. They press their attacks even when facing overwhelming odds. They adapt their tactics with alarming speed. And their technology, their energy weapons, they are disruptive in ways we are only beginning to understand." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle upon the assembly. "My outposts report a disturbing lack of self-preservation. They engage our cruisers in direct assaults, sacrificing their own vessels with what appears to be disregard for loss." Councillor Bryn, his multifaceted eyes swirling with suspicion, interjected, "Disregard? Or perhaps, Admiral, their vessels are merely expendable, a tactic often employed by less advanced civilizations. Flood the enemy with inferior craft while preserving their true strength. A classic distraction." Thrax felt a surge of frustration. He had anticipated this skepticism, this ingrained arrogance that blinded them to the true nature of the threat. The vessels themselves are not inferior, Counselor. They possess surprisingly advanced propulsion systems and formidable defensive capabilities. And their strategies, they are not the simple, predictable maneuvers of a lesser species. There is a calculating ruthlessness in their actions, a willingness to take risks that defy our projections. He projected a series of holographic simulations onto the chamber's central dais. The simulations depicted the recent engagements, showcasing the human warship's unconventional tactics, tight formations, rapid directional changes, and pinpoint energy weapon strikes that bypassed Cathar shielding with unnerving accuracy. The council murmured, their multifaceted eyes fixed on the projections. Zil, however, remained unconvinced. "These simulations, they are based on incomplete data, Admiral. We know little of their internal workings, their cultural motivations. Their tenacity could simply be a product of desperation, a sign of weakness, not strength." She turned to face the Grand Progenitor, the ancient and revered leader of the Cathar hegemony, who had remained silent throughout the debate. "Progenitor, what is your counsel? Should we devote significant resources to addressing this human anomaly, or should we continue our expansion along established trajectories?" The Grand Progenitor, his carapace a mosaic of ancient scars and intricate carvings, slowly turned his gaze upon Thrax. His voice, when it finally came, was a low, resonant hum that filled the chamber with an unsettling stillness. "Admiral Thrax, you have served the hegemony for millennia. You have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Do you truly believe that these humans pose a genuine threat to our dominance?" Thrax met the Progenitor's gaze without flinching. "Progenitor, I believe that underestimating them would be a grave error. Their behavior defies our established models. Their technology is developing at an exponential rate. And there is something else. A potential within them, a capacity for adaptation and innovation that could, if left unchecked, surpass our own." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "The warnings I have received, they are not mere speculation. They are based on observed realities, on the evidence of their actions. Human warships are a relentless force, and we ignore that warning at our peril." The Progenitor considered his words for a long moment, the silence in the chamber stretching taut. Finally, he spoke. "Very well, Admiral, I grant you the authority to initiate a measured response, deploy a scouting fleet to their territory, gather more intelligence, but exercise caution. We do not want to provoke a conflict that could divert our resources from more pressing concerns." Thrax bowed deeply. "As you command, Progenitor." He knew that a scouting fleet was a far cry from the full-scale military deployment he had requested, but it was a start. Perhaps, with enough evidence, he could convince the Council of the true extent of the threat. He just hoped that it wouldn't be too late. The relentless nature of humanity was something that had to be understood, not dismissed. Meanwhile, light years away, aboard the human exploratory vessel Dauntless Captain Eva Rostova stared out at the swirling nebulae through the reinforced viewport. The vast expanse of the cosmos held a certain allure, a siren's call to explore the unknown. But it also concealed dangers, lurking predators eager to exploit any weakness. And the Cathar hegemony, they were certainly lurking. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Jayan called from his station. We're picking up multiple energy signatures on long-range sensors. Cathar cruisers, they're vectoring towards our position. Rostova turned from the viewport, her expression calm and focused. Confirm their identification. Are they hostile? Negative, Captain. They're maintaining a safe distance, but their presence is unsettling. They're definitely watching us. Rostova nodded slowly. They've finally decided to take notice. After all this time, after all the careful probes, they're making their move. She turned to the comms officer. Open a channel, let's see what they have to say. A moment later, the image of a Cathar officer flickered onto the main view screen. His multifaceted eyes narrowed, his mandibles clicking with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Human vessel, the officer intoned, his voice translated into basic by the ship's universal translator. You are trespassing in Cathar space. State your purpose. Rostova stepped forward, her voice measured and confident. We are explorers representing the Terran Federation. We seek only peaceful contact and the exchange of knowledge. The Cathar officer remained impassive. The Terran Federation is unknown to us. Your presence here is irregular. You will provide detailed information regarding your technology, your intentions, and your home world. Failure to comply will be interpreted as a hostile act. Rostova suppressed a sigh. This was the dance they had anticipated, the probing questions, the veiled threats, the attempts to gauge their strength. We are willing to share information, but only on a reciprocal basis. We believe that mutual understanding is essential for peaceful coexistence. The Cathar officer hesitated, his multifaceted eyes flickering with uncertainty. Reciprocity is not Cathar policy. We offer knowledge, but we do not barter for it. Rostova smiled faintly. Then perhaps we have nothing to discuss. We'll continue our exploration. If you wish to change your mind, you know how to contact us. She cut the transmission, leaving the Cathar officer staring at a blank screen. Bold move, Captain, Jayan commented. Are you sure that was wise? They could interpret that as a challenge. Rostova turned to face him, her expression serious. We can't afford to show weakness, Jayan. They're testing us, trying to determine our limits. If we back down now, they'll push us further. We have to stand our ground. She paused, her gaze hardening. And we have to be ready for anything. The Cathar hegemony isn't known for its patience. They'll want answers, and they'll get them one way or another. What Rostova knew, and what the Cathar did not, was that humanity was not just exploring. They were preparing, they were learning, and they were ready to adapt, to evolve, to become the relentless force that the Cathar so foolishly underestimated. The Cathar would soon learn that the warning Admiral Thrax tried to deliver was not just a strategic assessment, but a fundamental truth about the very nature of humanity. Deep within the labyrinthine corridors of the Citadel, the heart of the Terran Federation's strategic command, Admiral Marcus Thorne stood before a holographic projection of the galactic expanse. The projection was dotted with countless points of light, each representing a known star system, a potential ally, or a potential enemy. But Thorne's attention was focused on a single cluster of stars, a region of space claimed by the Cathar hegemony. The Cathar are mobilizing, General Ramirez announced, his voice grim. Their scouting fleets are probing our defenses, testing our response times. They're preparing for something, Admiral. Thorne nodded slowly. We've been expecting this. They underestimated us for too long. Now they're starting to realize the truth. We're not the weak, insignificant species they thought we were. But are we ready for a full-scale conflict, Admiral? Ramirez asked, his expression concerned. The Cathar hegemony controls vast resources. Their military might is formidable. We're still recovering from the reconstruction. Thorne turned to face him, his eyes steely. We're not looking for a war, General. We're looking for a solution. A way to coexist without compromising our principles or sacrificing our freedom. But if they force our hand, we will be ready. He paused, his gaze hardening. We've learned from our past mistakes. We've built a military that is adaptable, resilient, and capable of delivering a decisive response. The Cathar may have superior numbers, but we have something they lack: ingenuity, determination, and a willingness to fight for what we believe in. He tapped the holographic projection, highlighting the cluster of stars that represented the Cathar home systems. We know their weaknesses, General. We know their vulnerabilities, and we have a plan to exploit them. The plan, codenamed Operation Nightingale, was audacious, bordering on reckless. It involved a covert infiltration of the Cathar homeworld, a direct assault on their central command structure, and the dissemination of a highly sophisticated computer virus designed to cripple their communications network. It was a high-risk, high-reward strategy that could either end the conflict swiftly or plunge the Terran Federation into a devastating war. "It's a gamble, Admiral," Ramirez admitted. "But it's the only chance we have to avoid a prolonged conflict. The Cathar won't negotiate. They'll keep probing, keep testing, until they find a weakness. We have to show them that we're not afraid to strike first." Thorne nodded. "Then let's make sure they remember it." Days later, a small, unassuming transport vessel, disguised as a Cathar freighter, slipped through the hegemony's defenses and entered the orbit of Cathar Prime. Aboard the vessel, a team of elite human soldiers, led by Commander Sarah Walker, prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives. "Remember the plan?" Walker said, her voice calm and confident. "We infiltrate the Citadel, disable the security systems, and upload the Nightingale virus. We minimize casualties, avoid detection, and get out as quickly as possible." The team nodded, their faces grim but determined. They were the best of the best, hand-picked for their skills, their courage, and their unwavering loyalty to the Terran Federation. They knew the risks, they understood the stakes, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. "For humanity," Walker whispered, her eyes filled with resolve. The transport vessel docked with a remote section of the Citadel, and the team disembarked, their movements precise and coordinated. They moved through the labyrinthine corridors, bypassing security checkpoints, disabling surveillance cameras, and eliminating any potential threats. Their advanced technology, combined with their expert training, allowed them to navigate the Citadel with remarkable efficiency. As they approached the Central Command Center, they encountered heavy resistance. Cathar soldiers, alerted to their presence, swarmed the corridors, engaging the team in a fierce firefight. The human soldiers fought bravely, their superior tactics and weaponry allowing them to hold their ground against overwhelming odds. But they were outnumbered, and their ammunition was dwindling. "We can't hold them off much longer," Sergeant Miller shouted, his voice strained. "We need to get to the command center now," Walker nodded. "Miller, take half the team and create a diversion. Buy us some time. We'll upload the virus and then meet you at the extraction point." Miller hesitated. "That's suicide, Commander. We'll never make it." "We don't have a choice," Walker said, her voice firm. "We have to trust each other. We have to believe in the plan. Now go." Miller nodded, his face grim. He gathered half the team and charged into the fray, drawing the Cathar soldiers away from the command center. Walker and the remaining team members pressed forward, their hearts pounding in their chests. They reached the command center, breached the security doors, and entered the heart of the Cathar hegemony's military operations. The room was filled with Cathar officers, frantically issuing orders, coordinating fleet movements, and monitoring the progress of the battle. Walker raised her weapon, her finger tightening on the trigger. "Hold," she shouted. "We don't want to kill anyone who doesn't need to be killed. We're here to disable your systems, not to slaughter your people." The Cathar officers stared at her in disbelief, their multifaceted eyes filled with confusion. They had expected a bloodthirsty attack, a brutal massacre, but Walker's words, they were unexpected, almost compassionate. "You are invaders," one of the Cathar officers shouted. "You are trespassing on Cathar territory. You will be destroyed." "We don't want to be your enemies," Walker said, her voice calm. "We want to live in peace, but we will not be bullied. We will not be intimidated. We will not be silenced." She gestured to one of her team members, who quickly connected a data cable to the command center's main computer. The Nightingale virus began to upload, spreading through the Cathar network like a wildfire. Chaos erupted. The Cathar officers scrambled to counter the attack, but it was too late. The virus was too sophisticated, too insidious. It shut down communication systems, disabled weapon controls, and scrambled sensor arrays. The Cathar hegemony's military machine was crippled. Walker turned to face the Cathar officers, her expression serious. "The virus will allow us to communicate directly. We can discuss a peaceful solution, a way for our species to coexist." Before anyone could react, a massive explosion rocked the command center. The walls trembled, the lights flickered, and debris rained down from the ceiling. The Cathar had activated a self-destruct sequence, attempting to destroy the invaders and the virus. Walker and her team barely managed to escape the command center before it collapsed, burying the Cathar officers beneath tons of rubble. They raced back to the extraction point, where Miller and the remaining team members were waiting for them. "Let's get out of here," Miller shouted. "They know we're here. They're coming for us." The team boarded the transport vessel and launched into space, narrowly evading a swarm of Cathar fighters. They sped away from Cathar Prime, leaving behind a scene of chaos and destruction. Back on the dauntless Asterisk, Captain Rostova received the report from Walker. Operation Nightingale had been a success. The Cathar hegemony's military capabilities had been temporarily neutralized, but the cost had been high. Many brave soldiers had been lost. They thought that they could contain us, Rostova said, her voice filled with emotion. They thought that they could control us, but they were wrong. We are not a force to be trifled with. We are humanity, and we will not be silenced. As the Cathar communications network sputtered back to life, a single message began to propagate across the hegemony's systems, a message delivered directly from the Terran Federation. It was not a declaration of war. It was an offer of peace. But it was also a warning. Human warships are a relentless force, the message stated, and we will not hesitate to use them if necessary. The Cathar Council chamber was once again a site of tense debate. They dare to dictate terms to us? Counselor Zil raged, her multifaceted eyes blazing with indignation. After what they have done, after they have infiltrated our homeworld and crippled our military. Calm yourself, Counselor, the Grand Progenitor said, his voice resonating with authority. We must not allow our emotions to cloud our judgment. The humans have demonstrated their capabilities. They are not the weak, insignificant species we believed them to be. We must consider their offer carefully. Consider it, Counselor Bryn scoffed. We should crush them. We should obliterate their worlds and wipe them from the face of the galaxy. Such a course of action would be unwise, Admiral Thrax cautioned, his voice measured. The humans have shown that they are capable of inflicting significant damage. A full-scale war would be costly, perhaps even devastating. We must explore other options. The progenitor nodded. Admiral Thrax speaks wisely. We must engage in diplomacy, but we must do so from a position of strength. We will accept their offer to negotiate, but we will not concede to their demands. We will remind them of our power, of our vast resources, of our long history of dominance. The Cathar hegemony and the Terran Federation agreed to meet on a neutral world, a barren planet far removed from the borders of either civilization. The negotiations were tense, fraught with suspicion and mistrust, but both sides were determined to find a way to coexist. Captain Rostova represented the Terran Federation, her calm demeanor and unwavering resolve earning the respect of the Cathar negotiators. Admiral Thrax led the Cathar delegation, his strategic acumen and understanding of human nature proving invaluable. We seek only peace, Rostova said, her voice clear and sincere. We want to trade with you, to share knowledge with you, to build a future of cooperation and understanding. Your actions speak louder than your words, Thrax replied, his multifaceted eyes fixed on her. You have demonstrated your willingness to use force. How can we trust you? We used force only as a last resort, Rostova said. You left us no choice. You underestimated us, you threatened us, you refused to acknowledge our existence. We had to show you that we were not to be ignored. And you have succeeded, Thrax conceded. We now understand your capabilities, but we still have concerns. Your technology is developing at an alarming rate. Your expansion is unchecked. What guarantees do we have that you will not become a threat to our dominance? We offer you a treaty, Rostova said. A formal agreement that defines our borders, establishes trade protocols, and ensures mutual security. We are willing to limit our expansion, to share our technology, to work with you to address any threats that arise. Thrax considered her words carefully. He knew that a treaty was the only way to avoid a devastating war. But he also knew that it would require compromise, sacrifice, and a willingness to trust a species that had proven to be unpredictable. We will consider your offer, he said finally, but we must have assurances that you will uphold your end of the bargain. We must have access to your technology, to your research facilities, to your military installations. We must be able to verify that you are not developing weapons that could threaten our security. Rostova hesitated. Such demands were intrusive, almost insulting, but she knew that they were necessary. She had to convince the Cathar that humanity could be trusted. We are willing to grant you limited access, she said, but we will not compromise our core principles. We will not allow you to interfere with our research or to control our military. We will share information, but we will not surrender our sovereignty. The negotiations continued for weeks, with both sides making concessions and compromises. Finally, a treaty was signed, marking the beginning of a new era of cooperation between the Terran Federation and the Cathar hegemony. But the treaty contained a hidden clause, a secret provision that was known only to a handful of individuals on both sides. It was a contingency plan, a safeguard against the possibility that the fragile peace would collapse. The clause stipulated that, in the event of a major threat to either civilization, the Terran Federation and the Cathar hegemony would pool their resources and launch a joint expedition to seek out a legendary artifact, a device said to possess the power to protect against any enemy. The existence of this artifact, known as the Aegis, was shrouded in myth and legend. Some believed it to be a figment of ancient folklore. Others believed it to be the key to the galaxy's survival. Years passed. Terran Federation and the Cathar hegemony prospered under the terms of the treaty. Trade flourished, knowledge was shared, and a tentative peace settled upon the galaxy. But the peace was shattered by a new threat, a looming darkness that emerged from the uncharted depths of space. A vast, unfeeling intelligence, known only as the Voidborn, began to consume entire star systems, leaving behind only barren wastelands. The Voidborn were relentless, unstoppable, and seemingly impervious to all forms of attack. The Terran Federation and the Cathar hegemony mobilized their forces, but their weapons proved ineffective. The Voidborn shrugged off energy blasts, shrugged off conventional weaponry, and devoured entire fleets without slowing down. Desperate, the leaders of the Terran Federation and the Cathar hegemony invoked the secret clause in the treaty. They launched a joint expedition, led by Captain Rostova and Admiral Thrax, to seek out the Aegis. The expedition traveled to a remote corner of the galaxy, following cryptic clues and deciphering ancient maps. They faced countless dangers, battling hostile alien species, navigating treacherous asteroid fields, and evading the relentless advance of the Voidborn. Finally, they arrived at their destination, a long-forgotten planet shrouded in a perpetual storm. On the surface of the planet, they discovered a massive, abandoned megastructure, a relic of a long-vanished civilization. Within the megastructure, they found the Aegis, a complex device composed of shimmering crystals and interwoven circuits. The Aegis was dormant, its power untapped. Rostova and Thrax worked together, combining their knowledge and their skills to activate the Aegis. As the device came to life, a surge of energy washed over the planet, dispelling the storm and revealing the truth about the Voidborn. The Voidborn were not an alien species. They were not a natural phenomenon. They were a weapon, created by a long-dead civilization to cleanse the galaxy of all life. The civilization had grown arrogant, believing that they were the only species worthy of existence. They had created the Voidborn to eliminate all potential rivals, to ensure their own dominance. But the Voidborn had turned against their creators, consuming their worlds and spreading across the galaxy. The Aegis was designed to counteract the Voidborn, to disrupt their programming and to restore their original purpose, to protect life, not to destroy it. Rostova and Thrax aimed the Aegis at the Voidborn, unleashing a wave of energy that cascaded across the galaxy. The Voidborn began to malfunction, their hunger abated, their destructive impulses suppressed. They retreated into the darkness, no longer a threat to the galaxy. The Terran Federation and the Cathar hegemony had saved the galaxy, not through force of arms, but through cooperation, ingenuity, and a willingness to trust each other. They had learned that even the most relentless force can be overcome with understanding, compassion, and a shared commitment to peace. As Rostova and Thrax stood side by side, gazing out at the stars, they reflected on the events that had brought them together. They had started as enemies, suspicious and mistrustful of each other. But they had ended as allies, bound by a shared purpose and a mutual respect. "We've come a long way," Rostova said, her voice filled with emotion. "Indeed," Thrax replied, his multifaceted eyes softening. "We have learned that even the most different species can find common ground. We have learned that unity is strength, and we have learned that hope can bloom even in the darkest of times." But the true twist, the most profound revelation, was yet to come. As the Aegis's energies pulsed outwards, a signal was detected, originating from beyond the known galaxy. A signal that had been dormant for eons, a signal that contained a message from the creators of the Aegis. The message was a warning. The Voidborn were not the only threat to the galaxy. There were other, even more dangerous forces lurking in the shadows, forces that were far more subtle, far more insidious, and far more difficult to defeat. The message urged the species of the galaxy to prepare for a coming storm, a cosmic conflict that would test their courage, their resilience, and their very existence. Rostova and Thrax exchanged a look of grim determination. They knew that the peace they had achieved was fragile, that the future was uncertain. But they also knew that they were not alone. They had each other, and they had the collective strength of the Terran Federation and the Cathar hegemony. "We have a long road ahead of us," Rostova said. "But we will face it together," Thrax nodded. "For the sake of our people, and for the sake of the galaxy, we must." The relentless force of humanity, tempered by compassion and wisdom, would be needed more than ever in the battles to come. And perhaps, just perhaps, that relentless force, united with others, would be enough to save the galaxy from the darkness that lay ahead.